I have sat down and done a very, very difficult exercise of trying to figure out what I think are the best three countries on my favorite continent of Africa. And those of you who don't know me, I am Salavalo. I have been to every country in the world, every single one. And so today I have racked my memory of all of these great places, all of the stunning sights, the amazing food, the wonderful people, and have tried to pick my three favorite countries in each continent. I'm going to post the videos all throughout this week. This video is going to be really hard because Africa is my favorite continent. I hate when people say Africa is a country. I don't even, it was so hard, and I was trying to think through like what is considered a best country, like what makes a place great. And I always kind of think of what are my favorite countries, right? This is definitely through my perspective, and so I can't say that it's through anybody else's lens other than myself. These are not facts. This is my opinion. But what I really like is places that teach you something, that show you the world in a different way. And so these are my three picks for the best countries in Africa. Number one is littlest country, I think, inside of the continent of Africa, not including the islands, and that is Lesotho. I have been lucky to go twice to Lesotho, and both times be hosted by my friend who is from Lesotho. Lesotho, yeah, it's our gorgeous little place in Africa. And I went once just to visit her and a second time for her wedding. The wedding is over. It was very long. And what's magical and special about Lesotho is that it's a very different and yet very similar to the entire idea of what one might have of the continent of Africa. So some of the ways that it's different is that it's very high. Today is the day after the wedding, and we have all the bridal party. We've decided to come up to the top of the mountains here in Lesotho. It is so gorgeous. The climate is very different from a lot of other places. It's very cold. There's like snow on the mountains. There's some of the highest points in the continent. We are at the Katse Dam here in Lesotho. Gorgeous blue water, super fresh air. And so that makes it a little bit switched to what we would normally think it. It's not kind of like the typical country for this continent in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it has so many aspects that are what I love about this continent, make it the best continent in the world. The food is amazing, braais, just like in South Africa, lots of meat, like over the fire, just like, I can't, it's actually making me hungry now thinking about it. But I remember when we first went, just getting this, going to the barbecue, waiting, and just getting like these, brown paper full of like steaming hot meat and opening it. And similarly at the wedding, getting a feast to celebrate for my friend, and the music. And the celebrations. And then also just the idea of the identity, what it means to be a small country, to be fighting for relevance on the world stage. It is just an interesting place to go. Is everybody having a good time on the boat?
Yes.
Yes! Thank you, Matema.
I'm on the boat. Look at me because I'm standing on a boat.
It's like 2007 all over again.
So I'll drive 10,000 miles till the day I die.
The second place is one that I often think about as one of the best countries in the world. I think it is really a place that we can learn a lot from, that makes us reflect on our own humanity and on development and progress for the future, and that is Rwanda. I have been, I think, 4 times to Rwanda, and I would love to go as often as possible. It is the safest and cleanest country in Africa. It is one of the fastest growing and has been for the past 20 years or 30 years almost, since the horrible genocide of 1994. The genocide is what a lot of people focus on when talking about Rwanda, and it is incredibly important to its history and to the history of humanity to think about the kind of violence that we can have towards one another. But really what's the most amazing part and what I wish more people focused on was the unification that's come after that, and not just the successes of that, but the challenges that come from it. It is not a utopia, a perfect place. It obviously in 25 years cannot get to that, but it's amazing what it has done. And I think the whole world can learn from that, and the whole world should study that to see what else we can learn. But beyond that, Rwanda is stunning. I mean, it is the land of 10,000 hills or 1,000 hills, and it is such bright colors and such like clean air. And I don't know, I mean, there's of course the gorillas that people go to in the national parks, but even just like within the city of Kigali, you know, the rolling hills and like the bright, I don't know, there's just something special like in Rwanda that I've always loved going, because it's just this like feeling. And I remember whenever I like a place, I will wonder if when I go back, if I will feel that same way. And having been somewhere 4 times, and each time, you know, really falling in love with it and being amazed. And I've gone at very different points in my life too. I went first in 2011 on my first trip to the continent when I was a student doing research, and fell in love with it then. I went again a couple years later in 2013, right before I started my professional career, just because I had loved it a few years prior. And then I went back in 2017 when I was doing my visiting every country in the world, and kind of just saw it more as a tourist, but also as someone who was familiar with it and who was more familiar with the business and the development. And so Rwanda is a place that I love, not just for its nature, not just for its history, but for this really like spirit of positivity that I've always felt when I was there, from the people, from the food, just from the air. And so I think that everybody should go and experience Rwanda, and it's definitely one of the best countries in Africa. The third country, and this was really hard to pick because I don't know like what I'm exactly defining as the best. Like I said, this would change every day, but I think that for number 3, for the best country in Africa, I'm going to go with Guinea. And why I'm going with Guinea is because I think it has a lot to offer, and that it is hard to access, which means that when you get past that kind of initial difficulty, the amount that you can learn and how wide your eyes can be opened is incredible. I went to Guinea twice. Once I just went to Conakry, but to the capital. I drove in and I drove out, so I saw a lot of that side, you know, kind of like the western coastline areas of it. And these are not like easy roads on a highway, right? It took hours and hours and traveling through the night. And Conakry is a really intense big city, and I like stayed in a small little hotel like on the water, and it was beautiful, and it had like kind of the vibe of a lot of large like West African cities. And I guess in that first trip there wasn't anything that really stuck out for me in just kind of seeing Conakry. But then I went for 2 weeks in the eastern region, and I stayed in a small town called Nzerekere for 2 weeks in the forest region of Guinea. And I drove in from Liberia and on the back of a motorcycle for 2 days to get through the forest and on these small dirt roads. And we got stuck right across the border for like a few hours, just in this like really tiny village with like maybe 20 families, and they were all playing some game that they taught me, and we just sat and we couldn't communicate in any spoken language, but we communicate with body language. And then I stayed in this little hotel in Nzerekere, and just kind of like lived like the small town like vibe for a while. And I did go and explore the close by chimpanzees, and it was just me and a guide, just the 2 of us with this family of 6 chimps, really just watching them. And that was really special and really amazing, and not like touristy at all. This was 2016, and there wasn't much tourism happening in West Africa because there was a lot of different types of terrorism around there at the time. And so that was scary, but also that I was kind of the only one around. And what's interesting about Guinea and why I chose it as well for this video is that it's the size of the United Kingdom. And when you look at the map, because the way they shrink Africa, you don't really understand that. And so that just means, think of all of the different natural sites and all the different cultures that you have that we're aware of in a larger country like the UK that exist, if not in multiples, in a country like Guinea, but because we often forget about that part of the world, about Africa as an entire continent, we kind of ignore it. And so I'm lucky that I had like a small glimpse into it, that I've been able to visit twice, that I've been able to stay for multiple weeks, but I've only scratched the surface, and I imagine that there's a lot more of fascinating things to learn in Guinea, and so I wanted to include it today on this list. And because it's so hard to pick my favorite countries in the world, and because I've done it before, I need to have a few honorary mentions, which are countries I left out on purpose because I've talked about them so much, and today I wanted to share new places. So the first one is Tanzania. I go every single year to Tanzania. I own a few farms. So beautiful being on the farmland. So I have a village that I love. I speak Swahili. Mimi ni hapa kijijini Mangula, Tanzania. Furahi sana kila mwaka kurudi kwa sababu hapa ni nyumba yangu. Tuko pamoja hapa. It is one of my homes. We found our duck after a little bit of a complicated process of trying to catch it. Lots of failure, and then finally success. Now we're gonna walk it back home, and they will begin to cook it. And so it's not fair to include on the list because I'm always gonna love it no matter what. Similar to that is Kenya. I lived there for 6 months. Also the Swahili kind of like has helped me when I'm going around the country. I've been there probably a couple dozen times in addition to living there. So I'm always gonna have a special place in my heart for Kenya. And the third one is Algeria. I also stayed there for a month. I have a video called The Country I Fell in Love With, all about Algeria. And so because I've talked about it a lot, I thought to leave it out of this video just for that reason. But Africa is absolutely the best continent, in my opinion. There's nowhere else that compares to it because of the diversity of the country, because of the diversity of the natural landscape, of the people, of all of the things that you can see and learn, and also because of the things that you don't even know you don't know. Africa is full of those. We have not even started to begin to understand the immensity of this place, like the power that it has, and I'm so excited to continue doing that, God willing, for the rest of my life. So I hope that you guys have liked this video. Like and subscribe, watch all the other ones, and until we can travel as freely as we want, I hope that we all stay safe.